In this third video we'll be looking at the process of dividing according to a ratio. And we're going to look at three different contexts in which we can use that strategy. We'll be looking at some contexts in which we're dividing an amount of money in different proportions, and then we'll be looking at an example where we're making up a certain amount of jam, like 5 kilograms of jam. How much sugar should we be mixing with the fruit? We may know the ratio, but we have to work out what that means in practical terms. And in our last context, we'll return to the task of making up a mortar to lay some bricks. We looked at that in an earlier question, where we know the ratio of cement to sand, and we want to know how much that means in practical terms. In this first example, we're told that a pastry mix contains fat and flour in the ratio of 1 to 2, and we're asked to work out how much fat we need to make 600 grams of pastry. Now, in tackling this problem, we need to remember that the information in the question is presented in a certain order, so we can see that the amount of fat is equal to 1 part of the ratio, and the flour is equal to 2 parts. So when we come to work out this question, it's important to remember the order in which the information is presented. Now, in this question we're asked to make 600 grams of pastry. Now, we saw that the number of parts in the ratio is equal to 3. We've got 1 part fat and 2 parts flour. So if we want to make 600 grams, we've got to divide that to work out how much each part of the ratio is worth. We need to divide that by 3, and we'll find that that's 1 part of the ratio is worth 200 grams. Now, if we return to our ratio, we saw that the fat is 1 part and the flour is 2. So now we just need to convert that ratio into amounts, actual amounts. So we saw that 1 part of the ratio is 200 grams. So 1 part is 200 there. And the flour is equal to 2 parts of the ratio, so that would be 2 lots of 200, making 400. So we can see there that we've divided the amount of pastry into fat and flour, and we could see that the fat is equal to 200 and the flour is 400, and we can always check our answer by adding those two amounts together. 200 plus 400 is equal to 600 grams of pastry. In this second example, we're told that the ratio of fruit to sugar in a jam recipe is 3 to 2, and we're asked to work out how much sugar we would need to make 1200 grams of jam. Now again, let's look at the information that we're given, and we could see that the fruit here is equal to 3 parts of the ratio, and the sugar is equal to 2 parts. Now, we're told that we need to make 1200 grams of jam, so let's find out what each part of the ratio is worth. Now, we saw that if we've got 3 parts fruit and 2 parts sugar, we've got a total of 5 parts. So if we divide 1200 by 5, we'll find that 1 part of the ratio is equal to 240 grams. So if we now use that information to work out how much fruit and sugar we need to have. So the fruit is equal to 3 parts of the ratio, and the sugar is equal to 2 parts. Now we saw that 1 part of the ratio is 240 grams, so 3 parts would be equal to 3 lots of 240, which would be 720. 2 parts of the ratio, that's the amount of sugar, will be 2 lots of 240, which will be 480. And so we know that the amount of sugar that we need is 480 grams. We can check our answer because those two amounts, the amount of fruit and the amount of sugar, should add up to 1200, which they do. In our last example, we're told that to make a fruit drink, you mix the concentrated squash with water in the ratio of 1 to 5. And we're asked to work out how much squash would you need to make 3 litres of the drink. Okay, so the concentrated squash, that's equal to 1 part of the ratio, whereas the water is equal to 5 parts. And we've got to work out how much squash we would need to make 3 litres of the drink. Now, 3 litres is equal to 3000 millilitres. So if we look back at our ratio, we can see that that consists of 6 parts, 1 part squash and 5 parts water. So if we divide the 3000 by 6, you will find that 1 part of the ratio is worth 500 ml. So let's now use that information to work out how much concentrated squash we mix with water. So we know that the squash is equal to 1 part of the ratio and that the water is equal to 5 parts. So 1 part would therefore be 1 lot of 500 there, whereas 5 parts would be 5 lots of 500, which would be 2500. So the amount of squash that we need to make 3 litres of the drink would be 500 ml. And again, as with the other 2 examples, we can check our answer by making sure that that amount plus that amount gives us our total volume of drink, which is 3 litres.